Welcome to episode 2 of the Husker Big Red podcast with Chris Peterson and Danny Gillette. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and joining me for every episode here is going to be co-host Danny Gillette. Take it away here, Danny.
Hey, Chris, good to be with you on this fine morning, and good to be with you in the midst of fall camp. It's getting closer to that time. We're less than a month away from Dublin, and, football is in the air again. Pro, college, it's a good time of year. And so the reason why, or one of the reasons why we are kind of starting off a little bit without a topic is that we really wanted to kind of introduce ourselves first. And I guess I'll start off. Um, my name is Danny. I am the Great Cornholio on Twitter. Some other user gave me that name. I was thinking about starting a Nebraska fan account 2 years ago, and some other Twitter user gave me that name idea, so I thought I'd go with it. I used to work at Fansided with Chris. We had a lot of good times there. He's an excellent guy to work for. And then once the pandemic hit and things got a little crazy, I was let go. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own Husker website. And here I am. And you can follow my website hold on, let me check the address, greatcornholio.org. I couldn't get a .com or whatever. I had to get a .org, but I just write my thoughts on there, and it's great to have a Nebraska platform. And also, I'd just like to say quickly, thank you for the engagement on both our accounts. I know Chris's Twitter handle has blown up over the past couple of days, and thank you for making this all worthwhile, because maybe we can turn this into something even bigger.
Yeah, we back at the Husker Corner at Fansided, that's where we kind of got our start, and kind of got away from that. But yeah, now I've just launched HuskerBigRed.com. We just launched here in the past couple of days, and Danny and I are going to be doing the Husker Big Red podcast here. We got a few more content ideas as well coming down the road. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Nebraska fan. So if you haven't checked out, HuskerBigRed.com or thegreatcornholio.org, definitely do that, for unfiltered, strong opinion and analysis, in Nebraska football. We really focus on, the news that you need to know, and kind of analyzing that too. It's not just what is this news, but we're going to tell you, what it means, and kind of, save you some time on that end as well. So I guess let's get into it. The Huskers have been, working in fall camp this past week. We got some images, with a bit of an open practice. So what have your
Mhm.
takeaways been? What do you think we've learned so far, Danny?
I think we've learned that we have a very deep wide receiver room, because there are some names and photos that I've seen in pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, he committed. Oh yeah, we have that guy now. And so it's just crazy how deep this wide receiver room is, and how, Mickey Joseph has kind of put his own stamp on the room. He is a very disciplined coach. He expects guys to work hard. He expects guys to put in effort. So I kind of am really starting to see the identity of the wide receiver room take shape, and it is completely different than what we have seen over the last couple of seasons. And honestly, that's why Mickey Joseph was brought in here. He's a no nonsense guy with a good track record of getting people to the NFL and, and the pros. So, I'm really encouraged by what we're seeing from the wide receiver room, and it's, this should be a good opportunity for Casey Thompson and quarterbacks of the future to really have a lot of things to work with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm really excited about the receiver room, and really from kind of top to bottom. I think it's, depth is not going to be an issue for the Huskers at receiver this year. Omar Manning, playing really well at camp. Alante Brown, I've kind of been waiting for him to break out, and, I've seen some encouraging things from him. And then you've got a lot of guys that I think are pretty proven, that they've produced Trey Palmer, Marcus Washington's produced. We've seen Oliver Martin do some things. So, those guys, we know what they can do. And that doesn't, and going beyond that, Nebraska has some other talented The transfers, the kid from New Mexico State, has looked, really solid so far in camp. I think he's going to produce more than people think. And yeah, so I think that this passing game, is going to take a real step forward, especially, if the quarterbacks, can kind of produce. And, I, not that we got to see a lot, but, there was a lot of talk about, the arm strength of, like Torres, and just kind of the improvement, I think, in the passing game. How important do you think that is for this offense, having the quarterbacks, step up to the plate?
I think it's huge because you're just talking about the situation alone. Nebraska needs to win this year, and they need strong quarterback play. Casey Thompson really needs to step up and be that leader and be the guy that can win football games. We've seen his highlights at Texas, and there were some questions as to whether or not sometimes he had shaky starts or whatever, but regardless, he needs to step up and play at a high level, and it starts in camp. And um, I'm curious to see how he progresses throughout because the opening game is only what 3 weeks away, and it's going to be crucial for him to get off to a good start because there's no margin for error this year.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see, on that topic, the opener. Yeah, it's a little over 3 weeks away. So I'm curious when, Scott Frost is going to name a starting quarterback. I feel like it's going to be sooner rather than later. It just doesn't seem like, Chippa Purdy's ready to kind of push for that job yet. I think he's still kind of, getting back. He's healthy, but there's a difference in, starting practice and just getting healthy and kind of coming in there, full bore. I don't see, Smothers or the other guys kind of pushing for the job. So do you see anybody pushing Casey, or do you think that he's like for sure going to start week 1 or week 0, I
I
guess?
think Yeah, no, I think he's for sure gonna start week 1. He wouldn't have come here if I don't think he would have come here if he wasn't, a guaranteed starter. I like Purdy and I like Smothers. I think Purdy is gonna take over once Thompson leaves, but right now I think it's Thompson's show. I mean, you know, he hasn't named a starter yet, but I think it's more so to be fair to the other quarterbacks, just so it doesn't seem so obvious, and they're still quote unquote playing for something or the starting job. But I think it's clear that Thompson is going to be the starter, and I think Frost is just not naming a starter out of respect to the other quarterbacks.
Do you One thing I've thought about, I talked about this in, one of my blogs the other day, is while this offense, I feel like there is a lot of talent, I'm, kind of wondering how it's all going to mesh together. Like you said, there's not margin for error. Nebraska can't afford a slow start. You've got a new quarterback, I mean, maybe a new starting running back, multiple probably new starters at receiver. How do you see all of that kind of, meshing together, and how important is that for Mark Whipple to, get everything flowing early on in the season?
I think it's very important. We need to have a balanced team. It can't just be Casey Thompson throwing passes 60 times a game. And, to that point, I think that's where having a coach like Brian Applewhite, is really going to come in handy. On Monday, he was really stressing the fundamentals to the running backs of getting past that first level of the defense and, getting beyond the second level and getting extra yards. So I think there's different fundamentals offensively that Nebraska is working on, and I think it's going to be really important for Whipple to kind of get everybody involved, have a balanced offense. Because I know when he was hired, there were questions as to, can he run the football effectively? Because he didn't run a ton at Pittsburgh. I think you have no choice in the Big Ten. I mean, you look at what Josh Gaddis did last year with Michigan, and he had two very capable running backs in Hassan Haskins, and I forget the other one's name right now. Chris,
Blake
but
Corum.
Blake Corum. There we go. So Haskins and Corum kind of were the one-two punch, and that took pressure off of Cade McNamara. I think, it would be smart for Nebraska to kind of follow the run and then pass game plan because it takes pressure off Thompson. it takes some pressure off the offensive line, and balance is going to be extremely important. So, I think it's very important that Whipple kind of calls a balanced game and stresses balance within the offense.
Yeah, I think Nebraska needs to be better at complementary football. There was too many times last year, the defense would get off the field and they would be trailing, and they would just go out there and throw three quick passes, and there was like the defense got literally no break. It's like you don't always have to go tempo. You don't always have to go out there and throw a bomb down the field. I just the play calling was really predictable, and it felt like they would abandon the running game too early, and that's not helping your
Yeah,
quarterback, especially one who's not accurate, like Adrian. I mean, Adrian Martinez, his completion percentage, is like in the 60s, but how many passes were bubble screens? You know what I mean? Like, how many times did he really throw the football down the field and was accurate with it? And so I just think,
don't remind me.
yeah, not enough.
Don't remind me.
So I just think
Yeah.
they've got to. So I hope that there's some thought about that. Hey, our defense was just out on the field for 10 minutes. Let's try to get a first down. And just so I'm hoping that Whipple will be able to just call games better. I just don't think that the games were called that well last year.
And I'm hoping there's a little bit more red zone efficiency. Over the last couple of years, Nebraska's really struggled inside the red zone, and I'm hoping there's more, running the ball in the red zone. Yes, the defense may stack the box, but if you fall forward, you're going to get 2 yards. So I'm hoping there's more efficiency in the red zone. I'm curious to see what Nebraska does there because that's the red zone is an area where they've really struggled over the past couple of seasons, and that's ultimately one of the major things that can either make or break a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to succeed in the red zone, you have to be able to run the football, and with more than just your
Hmm.
quarterback. That was
Hmm.
the only time Nebraska had success in the red zone was mostly Martinez just running in after plays broke down, or they kind of would lead run
Hmm.
him up the middle. And so I think that they do have to do that. And looking at the running back room, I actually feel pretty good about it. If Anthony Grant can be who we think he is. I mean, he was from Buford High School in Georgia, which is a powerhouse program. Georgia offered him. He started off at Florida State. Like, he had big time offers in high school, kind of like the transfer from a couple of years ago. I'm blanking on the name, but
Gabe
he,
Irvin.
yeah, not Gabe Urban, the guy from Georgia
Uh,
Tech.
oh, Diedrich Mills.
Yeah, yep, Dietrich. Yeah, I think that he can be a lot like Dietrich Mills. He's got a lot of talent, and it wouldn't surprise me if I think him and Mahir Johnson are basically going to be, 1A and 1B, for the starting lineup. They kind of both bring a little bit of different, skill sets to the position. But who do you see kind of, leading that running back room?
Anthony Grant, I mean, you look at what he did during the spring game, and yes, I know it's a spring game, no tackles, blah, 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 but just the way he explodes as soon as he gets the football and the way he's able to hit the hole immediately and find extra yards. There's no dancing at the line of scrimmage. There's no, pretty toe taps through the hole. It's just get the ball and then bang, he's off. So I think that kind of goes in line with what Applewhite was stressing about on Monday with the backs getting to the second level. Once you get past the first level, then the second level is oftentimes a tired linebacker, who is not going to, let's be real, not going to want to chase after you or is not going to outrun you. So I'm interested to see what Grant does. I was really impressed by him during the spring game, and I think he's really going to be a good player. One of the overlooked, I feel, additions of this offseason, and you know, I feel really confident about where this running back room is headed. I wasn't necessarily that confident last year, but I've been really impressed with the job of Applewhite.
Yeah, and Applewhite too. He talked about he was, think he was still at TCU, and he said, they're looking at Grant for TCU, and when he got to Nebraska, he said this is the guy that we thought he was. So that I thought was really encouraging. And excuse me. I like Mahir Johnson though, and I think he was underutilized last year. I mean, he had looking back at his stats, he had I think 5 games with over 60 yards rushing. They just never stuck with the run, and I don't think he's a guy that you want to give the ball to 20 times a game. But I'd love to see him catch the ball 5 times and run it 10 times. I'd love to see him get about 15 touches a game because I think if you do that, there's a good chance he's going to get you 90 to 100 yards almost every single game. I don't know that there's many linebackers in the Big Ten that are going to be able to cover that guy.
We have a lot of, big rumbling running backs. Johnson is more of a speed back. And, you know, you saw a little bit of what he could do in terms of catching the football in the passing game. He really is a dynamic playmaker. And I know we talked about, Grant and all the new additions to the running back room, but Johnson is definitely a guy that should not be forgotten about. It wasn't his fault that he was underutilized last season. I mean, he really does play at a high level. Um, and I'm interested to see where he falls in this equation because I really think he could be productive, especially in certain packages or in certain situations. I mean, with his speed, he's even a guy that I wouldn't mind as a receiving back in the red zone. Just get him the ball, get him in space, and let him go to work because there's not many linebackers that are going to be able to tackle him one on one in open space.
Yeah, I just think back to that Michigan game, and he had almost like 160 or 70 yards of total offense. Like that's we need to make that happen more.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that, again, we talked about it just a little bit ago. If you can get in a tempo offensively, even with short, quick plays, move the chains, give the defense some rest. Have that balance, give the defense some rest while making big plays. You're you have multiple positives on the field when you do that. And Johnson can certainly be that guy. He's the type of guy that can extend drives and keep drives going. And, you know, that's going to be probably my biggest thing this year. Just keep drives going, keep the chains moving, and give the defense some rest.
Yeah, because I think the defense is going to be legitimate. I think it's going to be just as good as last year, frankly, and that's my opinion. I know they lost some really good players up front and in the secondary, but both, I like the transfer portal additions, and I think there are some younger guys in the secondary, but again, there's a lot of talent, and I think there's a lot of depth there. So I feel good about the defense, going into this season for sure. What are your thoughts on the defense? Especially after this first kind of week of fall camp.
I really like where the defense stands. I'll tell you something. I was not a big fan of Shenander at all until last season when I really started to see kind of his vision, and now I trust in what he wants to do. He talked on Friday where there's certain situations where we could see a trio of Caleb Tanner, I believe it was Garrett Nelson and O'Shawn Mathis on the field at the same time. Yes, give me that all day, all the time. That's a scary three-headed monster there, and I'm excited to see what the defense can do. I mean, I think you're starting to see Shenander kind of get his feet under him defensively. I thought he did well last season, all things considered, and I'm excited to see what he can do with these new additions. Because you kind of mentioned it last week, Chris, where the transfer portal, that might be the new form of recruiting, so to speak. I mean, you have college and ready-made players available at your disposal, and does it suck for high school recruiting? Yeah. But I think, you know, Frost saw what Michigan State was able to do last season, and I think that got a bug in his ear like, yeah, maybe we need to catch up with the times. So if they can continue to get solid defensive players in the transfer portal and overall, then I'm good with that.
Yeah, I have been a big proponent of that. I think it's something that Nebraska just has to do going forward. Because look, if you're Ohio State, when you have basically the pick of the litter, you don't need the transfer portal. Although they still added a couple of guys, filling depth and things like that. But for Nebraska, the fact is you're only going to get so many top 100 kids, no matter how well Nebraska recruits. That's a limited number. And I mean, you could say that for just about Michigan, Penn State, most teams in the Big Ten. Michigan State even's not getting, Mel Tucker has signed one top 100, he has one top 100 commitment since he's been the head coach at Michigan State. That's it. And he hasn't even signed the kid yet. That's in this class. So, I mean, it makes sense to try to say, hey, there's 4 stars at Alabama that aren't playing. They could come play at Nebraska. So I think it makes a lot of sense, especially for like quarterbacks to hit that, transfer portal until Nebraska at least, starts winning more and getting more production, and saying, hey, this is a place for a quarterback. But if you're, a top 100 or top 200 quarterback, why would you come to Nebraska at this point? I mean, there's just not much to sell. But for Casey Thompson, there is, because this is a talented team. I don't know if you saw that thing, but someone posted on Twitter, some of the anonymous things that Big Ten coaches said. And they said, getting off the bus, Nebraska looks like the best team in the Big Ten West. And that's because, according to the recruiting rankings, they've had the most talent. But now they just need someone to, help that talent, turn into wins. And I think Casey Thompson's going to help with that. And I think getting those proven players instead of, taking shots in the lower end of your recruiting rankings, guys that are going to be in the 700s or maybe even the thousands. I just think it makes more sense. And I think it would be smart for Nebraska to be, not signing 25 kids. I don't think we're going to see Nebraska doing that anymore.
And, let's be real here. The more Nebraska wins, the more NIL money is going to funnel in, and the more kids are going to want to play here. It's all about NIL money now. I mean, you look at, some of the places like Miami where there's a lot of NIL opportunities, and you look even in California where our soon to be best friend new additions in USC and UCLA are right now, and there's a lot of money there too. So, winning cures everything. And I know we're beating a dead horse every single season, but if we win on the field, then things will come. And you know this is why I think this year is so important because with UCLA and USC coming in soon, if Nebraska can't win within the next year or so, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and NIL, I think, is a huge opportunity at Nebraska. We know how passionate this fan base is and how supportive they are. So, and I think Scott Frost, said, I think Trev Alberts, they both have said that. So I think there's a lot. I think the athletic department and the football program is all on the same page. But yeah, just got to get things moving in the right direction. So to transition over to recruiting, we'll have some predictions and we'll get to our mailbag really quick. But let's touch on the recruiting news of the week, which was Ashley Williams, decommitting over the weekend. And I don't know about you, but that decommitment post, was a little cryptic and kind of made me, it's talked about a lack of communication, but then also talked about, the effort of Mickey Joseph. So what was your read on that?
My read was that Nebraska has another recruit waiting in the wings, and that they maybe said we don't, not that we don't want you, but we have another guy. And my thinking on that was that Nebraska didn't think that they were going to land Williams or have a chance with Lenhart. And now that Lenhart is in the picture, they have, quite frankly, a better option to choose from. I'll just call it like I see it. And so it's certainly interesting. I never thought Nebraska would be in a position where they could pick from the litter of good four-star, defensive players, but that's what it is. I mean, I think Nebraska, probably knows that Cameron Linhart is coming. I think we're all kind of waiting for that shoe to drop, but I could see where, communication kind of stalled out on Williams.
Yeah, and this could be totally off. I don't have any super insider information on this, but my read on that was that maybe Mickey Joseph was recruiting Williams harder than like Scott Frost. I almost said Eric Crouch, but that just so and Auburn's there, and Brian, if Brian Harrison, their head coach, is recruiting you really hard, and the program that you're committed to, that head coach really isn't giving you that much attention. It's easy to see why a kid would would flip his recruitment or reopen things. And it seemed like to me, yeah, there was some talk on Twitter that Ashley Williams didn't have a committable offer, and maybe he committed without telling the kind of getting the approval of the staff. That does happen sometimes. Kids put their announcements out there and the staff doesn't give them the go ahead, because not every offer is a committable offer. And um, especially when you're looking at different positions and stuff like that. I would like to see Nebraska take them both. I don't. To me, I think that you could find a way to make it all fit, make it all work out. But as long as they get Cameron Lenhart, who has been talked about as a silent commitment and has had all the crystal balls. Everything's pointing towards a Nebraska commitment, but they got to get that locked in within the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, if this goes into September, if this goes beyond the start of his season, then it's totally back up in the air to me.
I think they will. I think they'll lock Lenhart in. Honestly, I don't see a situation where Williams leaves if Lenhart isn't coming. I think the staff. Again, I don't think they expected Williams to commit. I heard like just rumors that they were kind of surprised that he committed. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm excited that we're even talking about four-star defensive players. Which one can we choose from? So I'm interested to see when an announcement will come and when that will play out, and hopefully it works in Nebraska's favor.
And then, yeah, we can't really, have a podcast, recruiting podcast, without talking about Malachi Coleman a little bit. This week, I don't know how much you've followed his Twitter account. It's been pretty pro Oklahoma. It looks like somebody that a friend or something, just committed to the Sooners, and he's kind of been interacting with Caden Green, who was a Nebraska top target at one point. He took an unofficial visit to Oklahoma, in June. Hasn't taken an official visit there yet, but if the Sooners get him on campus for an official visit sometime this fall, like, what's your concern? What's your panic meter at, like 1 to 10?
10, because he has a lot of huge offers, and I always thought it was kind of a long shot, even with Mickey Josephs, to have Malachi Coleman, stay home. Because again, all those programs, Oklahoma, Georgia, Oregon, they have a recent track record of winning, and, they have, you know, a proven track record to the NFL. And Nebraska doesn't have that yet. I think Coleman is going to officially announce on, I think it was October 15th. So I'll be interested to see how that announcement goes. I don't think it's going to go in Nebraska's direction, but knowing Mickey Joseph, he will probably, you know, get that Louisiana pipeline going again and, get some of those guys from that area, because we have had success in the state of Louisiana just in the 2023 class alone. So that is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska's had momentum. I wish, there was a way they could have closed this summer. I just, it seemed like Malachi always wanted to take his time. He has that official visit set, I think, to go to USC. And that worries me, him as a wide receiver and that Lincoln Riley offense. But that's why Nebraska's got to come out of the gates, really kicking butt. It's like if they beat Northwestern, and, that's that Oklahoma game, I think, is a really, if they could find a way to win that game, I'd be feeling a lot better, about Malachi Coleman and, trying to keep him home at Nebraska. Because, I mean, they're Nebraska kids, it's still, while Nebraska might not have the big name nationally, kids in Nebraska, it still means something, to be a Cornhusker and Lincoln Memorial Stadium. But you still have to give the kid a reason to commit. You have to give him a reason to say, like, this is going to be the right fit for you for your NFL future, and you can win here. And, like, so if they start off 1-4, or 2-3, or anything like that, I just don't see it happening.
And, just speaking from a college perspective, a lot of kids don't want to stay home. They want to go off and, have a new experience and have a change of scenery. So that could be a part of it too. I mean, truthfully, even if we start winning, I don't see Malachi coming here, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And like you said, I think it will depend a lot on where Nebraska is record wise by the time his commitment date comes around.
Yeah, and kids. That's the thing, is kids make decisions for lots of different reasons. C.J. Carr didn't go to Michigan, and he was Lloyd Carr's grandson, and he said he was never going to go. He just didn't want to do that. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, think about the
Yeah.
pressure. Your dad was a national championship head coach. I can understand wanting to go somewhere else and starting your own kind of legacy. So, if Malachi does decide to go somewhere else, we should still support him, but hopefully, he'll go Big Red.
Because truthfully, there's a lot of talent in the state of Nebraska in the next couple of classes. So I'm really hoping Nebraska can kind of keep a lot of those kids in state. We are seeing it with the 2023 recruiting class, and hopefully that good momentum will continue because I really do think there are some extremely talented kids in the state, and now it's all about keeping as many as we can home because I truly believe there are quality players there.
So now that we've got some recruiting in here, I think it would be a great time to. Well, we've got some mailbag questions this week, which is going to be kind of a segment we're building up. We kind of threw the mailbag out a little bit late last night, so we'll this next week before episode 3, we'll make sure we get it out to you guys sooner. But we do have some Twitter questions out there. Do you still have those, Danny?
Yeah, let me pull them up real quick. Let's see. I do have one right here, and I'll start off. This one's from Greg, who interacts with us a lot on Twitter. Hey, Greg. He says, "What positions are you concerned about, and which position got the best upgrade or improvement?" Um, for me, the position I'm most concerned about is offensive line. I've been encouraged with the way that Donovan Raiola has been kind of leading practice. There was a soundbite of him on Monday telling guys to take his head off. So I love that aggression. I love, the energy that he seems to bring. And so, I think there is hope there, but we have to see it all, be put together over the course of a game because a quarterback can only be as good as his offensive line. And that's why I believe the offensive line has to have a big year because if they have a good year, then I can see this offense really performing at a high level. And then the second part of the question, which position got the best upgrade or improvement? It had to be the wide receivers for me, starting with the coach and Mickey Joseph. You know, we kind of talked about it a little bit. He's strict. He demands the most out of his positional unit, and then the talent that we have now, Trey Palmer. I mean, we've seen Omar Manning get good reviews from Joseph, and guys like that, and a coach like Joseph is going to completely remake the wide receiver room. And I'll throw it over to you, Chris, on this one.
Yeah, as far as the first question, the biggest concern, I completely agree. It's offensive line right now. I think, that's probably what every Nebraska fan is saying. But, I don't know if it's me just like drinking the Kool Aid. I feel cautiously optimistic about the offensive line. I think, talent, coaching is a huge thing. You have seen that with the New England Patriots, over the years with their offensive line coach, Scarnecchia, I think, Dante Scarnecchia. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
always have a bunch of, first round draft picks, but you can coach up offensive line. And that's the thing is Nebraska's got 4-star dudes, and they've got talent. They just have to get it to produce. I think Donovan Raiola is going to do that. I don't think that they're going to, have as many problems giving up sacks last year. That was one thing with Adrian Martinez too that drove me crazy. Is I thought at times he just made poor decisions with the ball. He would hold onto the ball way too long. He wouldn't throw it away. He would always try to scramble, and sometimes that would work out, but sometimes that would turn into a 15-yard loss too. So in terms kind of going into the other question of the upgrade, I'm going to go with quarterback. And I think that not just, adding a starter, but I think 2 starter caliber guys, you added a lot of depth, which I think is really important, especially if your quarterback's getting hit a lot. You might need some extra, depth to get through the season. But I just think, for Adrian Martinez has a ton of talent. I do think he'll probably get Kansas State to a bowl game this year. They've got Deuce Vaughn, so he doesn't have to do everything. But Scott Frost he hitched his trailer to Adrian Martinez as a freshman, and that was the biggest mistake that he made as head coach of Nebraska football. After a couple of years, he should have realized he needed competition, but he just continued to, invest in Adrian Martinez, and Adrian Martinez just continued to turn the football over when it mattered, to fumble, to not be an accurate passer. So I think getting somebody who can be reliable at quarterback and who can get the ball to wide receivers, who have talent, to me is the biggest upgrade. Although I do really like O'Shawn Mathis at edge too.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a high motor impact playmaking guy. And just to get to your point on hitching his trailer, to Martinez, putting all his eggs in one basket, I do think he kind of lived and died with Martinez a little bit too much, but there really wasn't a ton of tangible quarterback competition in the room. I mean, we saw Luke McCaffrey a little bit in 2020, he wasn't the worst, but he wasn't the best. But I think development suffered as a result of Frost hitching his, you know, putting all his eggs in one basket with Martinez. And then I think also, I'll just say it right here, I don't think Mario Verduzco was that good. I think he honestly confused Martinez a little bit. He didn't know whether to run or pass at times. I think, you know, he, they tried to make him a pocket passer, but he wasn't that. And then they probably figured that making him a pocket passer didn't work. So then they tried to, get him to run a little bit more. He just looked confused at times. So, I think it's going to be good to kind of have some, so a what do you call that? A succinct message, a synchronized message at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I think he was talking about being in the red zone and how important it is to take care of the football. And I thought one thing that Mark Whipple said, is that basically football games are lost more than they're won, and a lot of times it's by the quarterback. And I think that's a perfect example of what happened at Nebraska football the last few years. There was numerous games where it's a bummer to put on one guy, and it wasn't all on him, but that's unfortunately that's you as the quarterback, and so hopefully Casey Thompson will be the guy to kind of deliver this year. I do have a lot of more confidence in him. I do have questions too. It's not like he's Arch Manning or like Quinn Ewers or anything
Mm,
like that, but
mm.
I do think he is an accurate passer. I think he's a guy that has some NFL potential, and I think we got the best coach possible in Whipple to have him reach his full ceiling at Nebraska.
And Whipple's seen all levels of football. He was a coach in the NFL as an assistant at one point, so he's been around the block. He definitely has a little bit more experience than say a guy like, you know, Matt Lubick, for instance, who was the offensive coordinator, who is now a special analyst at Kansas. So that makes me wonder how the heck he got so high up as a Nebraska offensive coordinator. But anyway, um, I do have confidence in Whipple, and I think he will get this ship steered in the right direction.
So, do we have any more mailbag questions, or are we going to move on to
I'm
predictions?
trying to see. I don't think on my end we do. I think we put it out too late, so we're gonna put out a tweet on Monday, and we're gonna ask you guys for your mailbag questions. This was an idea, the mailbag, that we kind of thought of late last night, so that's partly our fault. But hey, you know what? This is what's great about this. You never know what to expect from us, even if it's late night mailbag questions.
Well, and I did get one or another one, but it was basically the same question. What's your biggest concern? I think it was, how concerned are you with the offensive line? So, I think we covered one of the biggest topics that's on the mind of Nebraska fans right now is the offensive line, because I said this last week, but when Nebraska's good, they've got to be good in the trenches, and that just has not been the case under Scott Frost. No matter what you want to say about him, what they've done on the offensive line has not been up to snuff.
And we talk about the passing game and pass protection and all this too, but the running game. If your running backs can't get running lanes, then there is no, getting to the second level or even getting past the first level. So while I do think it's important to teach the running backs to, make sure to get past the first level, it's also important that the offensive line creates a running lane for them to allow them to, not struggle with the first level. Because, a good running lane can make things happen, and that's ultimately what they need, particularly in the red zone when talking about efficiency.
All right. Well, so our last kind of section for the show today, here for episode 2 of the Husker Big Red podcast, is we're going to talk some bold predictions for the 2022 season. And we did have, a few Twitter users that kind of put out some bold predictions the other day. So we're going to talk about some of those, and then we're going to put out some of our own bold predictions for this season. So first, we'll talk about some that we saw on Twitter, and maybe we'll talk about how likely or unlikely. We'll give some over under. So first one, though, I saw that the first bold prediction was a Nebraska fan. Couldn't find the tweet, but their prediction was that Nebraska was going to go 15-0 this year, which would mean that they won the Big Ten and won the college football playoff. So, Danny, I can tell from your face you might not think it's that realistic, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 being, no chance in hell, and 10 absolutely happening. What's your scale there? What's your rating?
I'm gonna have an absolutely cop out answer here and say 5. Who knows? I mean, that's the great thing about college football. Who knows? We have a good, easy start to the season for the first 2 games, and then Oklahoma. And so, who knows? I mean, at the very least, I just hope we can play in the winter months and have something to look forward to. 15-0, a little unrealistic, but you never know. I would love that, and it would make this team actually fun to cover. Let's be honest here.
Maybe Casey Thompson will find his inner Joe Burrow, and he'll be like a top 10 pick next year's draft after throwing for like 4,500 yards. And
Heisman Trophy winning Casey
yeah,
Thompson.
yeah, exactly. That's about the only way I foresee that situation playing out. But maybe Mark Whipple really is the quarterback guru. I don't know. I would My scale though. I'm gonna give that a hard 0. I think I don't think there's a chance that Nebraska, even if they did win the Big Ten, if it was just winning the Big Ten, maybe. But I can't see Nebraska beating Georgia or like Alabama or Clemson if it came to that. But you never know. Like I said,
And
maybe.
also don't forget that Nebraska can't have Scott Frost on the sidelines if they make any sort of like bowl because of those stupid sanctions about the stupid analyst who didn't help at all because clearly our special teams were garbage. But yeah, so those sanctions could prevent Nebraska from going 15-0. So thanks, Jonathan Rutledge. You did absolutely nothing except screw over Nebraska.
And it's funny that you had how do you have extra special teams analysts and you get penalized for that, and you lose a goddamn game because your punter punts it to the complete wrong side of the field? Like I used to coach middle
Yeah,
school football,
clearly.
and that never happened.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Jonathan Rutledge did not do his job, but he did manage to screw over Nebraska. So, if I had to guess, there's no love lost between Nebraska and Rutledge there.
Yeah. So how we touched on it a little bit, but legitimately, that was one person said, hey, I think Nebraska's going to be better than people think, and they can win the Big Ten West this year. How on the 0 to 10 scale, how realistic do you think that is?
Hmm. Again, I'll say 6 because they have all the talent to do so, right? We go through this every single summer. They have the talent on paper. It's about execution. I could definitely see it this year. I mean, now we have a group of coaches that can make sure things, don't get out of hand. We have a strong group of coaches. So I could see it. I really could see it, but it's all about, like you said, the Oklahoma game is kind of the big one that everybody's circling on their calendar. They can beat Oklahoma and, start the season off strong. In a win over Oklahoma would do wonders for this program. And, I could see them just kind of rolling if that happens. If they don't, I could still see them getting on a nice little run. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible, especially if, all the talent that we've gotten, works the way we think it's going to.
Yeah, and if you beat Oklahoma, you get that confidence, and confidence is a huge factor. Then if you can beat
Mm.
Oklahoma, you can beat Wisconsin and Iowa and Minnesota, and that's really, in Purdue, that's who Nebraska is competing with for the Big Ten West this year. None of those programs, I don't think any of them are, should even be ranked really in the top 15. Going into the season, Wisconsin's probably the best, but they're Wisconsin's just extremely consistent. They're not going to beat you with a bunch of talent. Nebraska has as much talent as Nebraska, or I mean, as Iowa or Wisconsin. So, yeah, I would give it a solid 5. I think, it's not totally unrealistic to say that this team could break out and win the Big Ten West if everything comes together.
Yeah, I don't think it's unrealistic at all. I mean, I think Minnesota seems to be our kryptonite over the past couple of seasons. And, to PJ Fleck's credit, he's doing a good job of, building a program over there, or at least keeping the program consistent, especially since that state is a hockey state. Let's be real here. So, I mean, Minnesota has always been a thorn in our side. And, Iowa, can you imagine beating Iowa? That would be wonderful. That would be absolutely wonderful.
That
That
w-
would definitely make my Thanksgiving turkey go down a little easier.
This year, it's
by
gonna,
leftovers anyway.
yeah, the leftovers. It's gonna happen. It will happen. We're gonna speak it into existence this year. Um,
C-
but
because truthfully, we weren't that far. Like, we're not that far off. I mean, last year we were in the game. Weren't we up at one point, and then our defense kind of collapsed? Yeah, and then
led by, I think we led by
20.
11 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, yeah, and then 2020. An Adrian Martinez fumble late in the game on a drive that could have led to points. That's not surprising, but yeah. So we've been close. We've been close, but hopefully this is the year because you coaches say they don't think about rivalry games and this and that, but you can bet Scott Frost and the coaching staff wants to beat Iowa. Mickey knows what it means to, beat Iowa and the rivalry behind it. Bill Bush knows. All these coaches know what it would mean if Nebraska beat Iowa, so that would certainly be exciting.
That would definitely, I think Scott Frost is sticking around, if he beats Iowa this year. So now we've got, let's kind of finish off here with our bold predictions, our last part of the show. We're each going to talk about our bold prediction for the season. Not necessarily the record or anything, but just kind of a bold take that we have for the 2022 Huskers. So I'll let you go first, Danny. What's your bold prediction for Nebraska in 2022?
I said a 1,000-yard receiver, but I'm going to kind of shorten it down to a player prediction. I'm going to say that Omar Manning will have at least 500 receiving yards. And I don't think that's a bold prediction necessarily when you think that he had 384 yards last season. He's a type of player that I think needs a solid coach and, somebody to, you know, continue to encourage him and have him focused, and Mickey Joseph can do that. I think Omar Manning is finally going to reach that, big time player potential that we have been waiting for. Because don't forget, he was the top rated junior college recruit just a couple of years ago. So the potential is there, and I could really see this being a breakout season for him. He's had a Mickey talked about it on Monday. He's been a guy that stood out in camp so far. So I'm curious to see what he can do, and I think at least 600 yards for Manning this year.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. We'll see how all the receiving yardage kind of plays out, and it could be 1,000 yard receiver. It might be tough with all the depth at receiver, but yeah, Omar Manning seems poised for a big year. Um, so that leads me to my bold prediction, and I'm going to go back to the pass rush that I've been talking about. I had an article this week on HuskerBigRed.com about how the pass rush was going to be fierce, and you kind of talked about Caleb Tanner and Nelson and O'Shawn Mathis all being on the field at the same time. My bold prediction is that I believe that both Garrett Nelson and O'Shawn Mathis are going to get double digit sacks. So basically, I think those two players are going to have more sacks in 2022 than the entire Nebraska football team had in 2021 when they ranked tied for 98th in sacks. So it's going to this year they're going to get way, into the 30s, and that defense is going to get some turnovers and some takeaways, and that's going to help us get a winning record and get a bowl game or get back to a bowl game.
Right, and we've talked about Mathis a lot over the first couple episodes, but Nelson and Tanner should not be forgotten, particularly Nelson. I watched him during the spring game, and you know, it was the spring game was just more of what we always see from Nelson. He absolutely flies around the football. He's hungry for the ball. He never stops in his pursuit, and he's the type of player that can really be a cornerstone of a defense. And I love the way he plays. I love his energy. I love that he's not afraid to get muddy and dirty. And, I love that he plays hard and has that motor. And, if I were to build a blueprint of a player that, I want on a defense, Garrett Nelson would be a guy that I would choose to mold my player after.
Yeah, Garrett Nelson's the guy that you want in your foxhole.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
all right, folks. Well, that is going to wrap up episode 2 of the